If you want to improve your English and better understand native speakers, there's nothing like active listening. Active listening means spending about 10 to 15 minutes really digging into a short part of a video or audio recording and focusing on parts that you don't think you'd be comfortable using in a conversation. These can be parts that use new expressions or sentence structures that you're not familiar with. We're going to do an active listening exercise today with American pop star Katy Perry. First, we'll listen to about a minute and a half of an interview. Next, we'll analyze and look at some of the more interesting and challenging expressions. Finally, we'll practice what we learned to help you remember. Time to listen.
How is it working with my ex? Congrats on Idol. How is Ryan Seacrest? Is he good?
He's good.
Yeah.
He's tried and true.
Yeah. Yes.
People just feel like he's a part of their family, and he never lets anyone down. I remember he was actually sick. It was the first time he missed a show last season.
That's right.
And
never before has he?
Never in like 17 seasons has he missed a show. So he was truly sick, obviously. Like he literally could not do it. And it's amazing. He just really shows up for people, and he is something that they can depend on, and consistency is key.
He's a really good friend. That's just he's a good boy and a good friend.
He's a good boy. He's a good friend. We went to dinner all together in New York, and we went to this really nice restaurant that I really wanted to go to, but it's like the nicest restaurant ever. Yeah. And I haven't been able to go, and I was like, why don't we go to this place? Because Lionel's like, he's the best. And, it'd be fun. It'd be a treat for us all. And so we go, and Ryan had to leave a little early, and he was like trying to leave some money. And I was like, no, we've got this.
Yeah.
And then he leaves, and then we finish the dinner, and he's actually paid for the whole thing.
He's already paid for it.
All right, time to discover what you can learn from just one short clip. First up, do you recall what expression the radio host Ellen used when asking Katy a question? It was the same in both of these blanks. How is it working with my ex? How is Ryan Seacrest? A common point of confusion can be knowing when to ask how is something versus what is something like. We typically use how is to ask about things that change more frequently, something like somebody's mood or their health. For example, how is Katy? She is good. We're asking about her mood and her health. On the other hand, we usually use what is something like to ask about things that don't change as much. Stuff like a personality or an appearance. What is Katy like? She's really pretty and a great singer. We can also use how is to ask for someone's reaction to an experience. An experience can be something like work, a movie, reading a book, etc. How's work? It's okay. Things are busy right now. This is basically asking what the person thinks about the current state of their job. How's your new book? It's really exciting. I love it. This is asking for their reaction or what they think of their book. The other thing you can use what is something like for is to ask for a description of someone or something. These, of course, are general rules, but sometimes you'll see some overlap or even mistakes with how native speakers use them. Take, for instance, the two ways that Ellen, the interviewer, used it. How is it working with my ex? How is Ryan Seacrest? Is he good? The second question is a perfect fit for how is. We're asking about Ryan's current mood and health. The first one is honestly a better fit for what it's like, because we're asking for a description of something, not a current situation. Note that it's perfectly fine to say, what is working with my ex like, or what is it like working with my ex? Both mean the same thing. While there can be overlap between the two, my advice is to try to stick to these usages. After all, you might get different answers depending on which one you ask. Asking someone, how's the weather, would typically be referencing the current weather today. As a response, you'll probably get something like, it's a bit cloudy but pleasant, which is a current condition and something that changes frequently. On the other hand, asking, what's the weather like, is more commonly used in reference to what the climate is like in a place like Florida, for example. What's the weather like in Florida? It's usually hot and humid. This is describing the general climate, which doesn't change all that frequently. Next, we see the expression tried and true. Tried and true means something is proved to be good multiple times in the past. It is something you can trust because it has been used multiple times with a good result. For example, I might say, active listening is a tried and true way to improve your English because I have seen and used the technique multiple times and it always helps. When Katy says that Ryan is tried and true, she means that he has shown over and over again that he is a good person. By the way, if you're wondering who this Ryan guy is, he's a pretty famous TV host. He's probably most famous for hosting the TV show American Idol. Next, do you remember the expression that Katy used here? It's another way of saying to disappoint someone. And he never lets anyone down. If you let someone down, it means you disappointed them. We usually put the person you are disappointing in between let and down. How would you complete this sentence to explain that you don't want to disappoint yourself? I continue to study English so that I don't let myself down. How would you complete this one to say that you feel like you disappointed your father? I feel like I let my father down. He really believed in me. Moving on, do you remember what word Katy used here to describe something that Ryan Seacrest did for the first time? It was the first time he missed a show. The word miss has a lot of uses, but a very common one is to talk about being late for something or failing to go to an appointment or an event. How would you use it here to say that you're mad that you are not at the concert right now? I'm so mad that I'm missing the concert right now. We use the present continuous tense, I am missing, because it is something happening in this exact same moment. How would you finish this sentence? If you don't hurry, you might miss the bus. Next up, we see the expression never before. This raises a good question. What's the difference between just saying never versus never before? When we just use never, such as he never missed a show, this means it's something that did not happen and still hasn't happened. When we say never before, such as he never missed a show before, it connects the past to a current event. In the past, he never missed a show, but now he finally did. If you say, I've never been to Chicago before, then it means you either are there now, are about to go, or have the opportunity to go. If you just say, I've never been to Chicago, then that means that you aren't there and you probably don't have the opportunity to go there right now either. The next interesting expression is shows up for someone. Shows up has a bunch of meanings, but in this case, can you guess what it might mean by its context? It basically means to support someone. He just really supports people. You could say, I love how you always show up for your brother, which is the same thing as saying, I love how you always support your brother. At the beginning of the next section, we heard an interesting way of pronouncing a familiar phrase. Listen again to how Ellen said this.
He's a really good friend.
He's a really good friend. Sometimes the way you say something adds a little extra information. When you slow down and add space around an adjective, this really emphasizes the adjective and lets people know that you strongly believe in what you're saying. When Ellen says that Ryan is a really good friend, it means that she strongly believes that this is a fact. If someone asked you for a description of your new boss, they might say, what is your new boss like? Try pronouncing the answer, adding space around the adjective nice to emphasize how strongly you believe that your boss is a nice person. I like her a lot. She's a genuinely nice person. Next section. Do you recall how Katy ended the first sentence? It's like the nicest restaurant ever. This is another common structure. When we have a superlative, something like best, nicest, coolest, largest, or worst, we sometimes add ever at the end to really emphasize that this thing is the best, nicest, coolest, whatever. For example, you might say, this is the worst book ever, if you just read something that you hate more than anything else you have read. In contrast, you could also say, I just had the best dinner ever, if you loved it so much that you think it's one of the best ones you have had in your life. Next, we heard Katy ask, why don't we go to this place? Saying why don't, followed by an infinitive without the to, is a great way to make a suggestion. You could say, why don't we dance, if you want to invite someone to dance with you? Or, why don't you ask her, if someone asked you a question that you don't know how to answer and you think someone else might? Or, why don't we go out to eat, if you want to suggest that we go to a restaurant together? How might you respond if you got this text message from a friend? What do you want to do tonight? Why don't we see a movie? You are suggesting an activity. Or this one from your sibling. Is there any way I can help? Why don't you check with mom? You're saying you don't know if there's a way to help, but your mom might. The last interesting expression in this part of the conversation is when Katy says, it'd be fun. It'd be a treat for us all. This is one of the major uses of the word would, using it for hypothetical or imaginary situations. You are thinking about what a situation might be like. What would that be like? When Katy used it, she used it as a contraction. It'd be fun, it'd be a treat. To say that at that point in her story, going to a restaurant was just a hypothetical situation. It had not happened yet, and she was imagining what it might be like. How could you use it here if your friend offered you a taco and you were thinking about what it might be like to have it? Want a free taco? No way, that'd be awesome. Like I said, this is just one of a few ways to use would. If you want to learn all of them, check out my video on how to use would. Finally, we see the expression, we've got this. Saying, I've got this, you got this, she's got this, etc. all mean that either you plan on doing something and are not worried about it, or you are confident that someone else can do something, and so you want to give them some encouragement. For example, if your friend said, I'm so worried about my speech tomorrow, you might say, don't worry, you got this, to encourage them and let them know that you are confident they can do it. All right, time to complete the active listening cycle. Let's practice some of the new expressions you learned. First up, what do you think the question was regarding this new car? How's the new car? It's awesome. We wanted to know what the person thinks of their new car. If someone asked you if you need any help, but you're not worried about doing it on your own, how could you respond? Need any help cleaning up? No thanks, I've got this. What's another way to say supports in this sentence? A good friend always shows up for you. What's a good way to suggest that someone takes out the trash? Why don't you take out the trash before you leave? Finally, let's say you just arrived in Seattle, and a tour guide said, welcome to Seattle. What do you want to see first? How could you respond? I'm not sure. I've never been here before. What do you recommend? Great job. If you're a little tired, that's a good thing. It means you've improved your English. If you want even more content like this to help you improve, be sure to click subscribe and head over to deliberatenglish.com to sign up for more advice and tools to help you improve even faster. See you soon.